Hey everyone, I'm back to talk a little bit more about the big SUP T-16 fin. I did get a chance to take it out on the river this weekend, but the wind was a little bit much to really be able to determine how well it tracked. So this last weekend, I took it to the pool for our local skills session and decided to run it through a couple of tests, and I use air quotes, they're not the most scientific thing in the world, but at least some comparisons to see how well it did compared to some of my other fins. So I compared the fins starting with the shallowest draft first, and that was the big SUP. And if you remember from my last video, it's about 2 3/4 inches deep. And since that video, I've actually talked with the folks over big SUP a couple times, and they did confirm for me that their square inches, their surface area measurement for their fin is based on just one side of each fin. So just 2 of the 4 faces rather than all 4. So I've updated my measurements for this video for all of the other fins to match all of that. So if you're watching the old one, those numbers aren't quite accurate. This is the more accurate comparison here. With that in mind, this fin does have 87 square inches of surface area, even though it only drafts just under 3 inches deep. So that's pretty awesome. Let's get to the performance. On the water, I felt that this fin offered some really high quality, predictable tracking. It definitely still has a little bit of spin to it when you stop paddling, but when you see this compared to some of the other shorter fins, I think you're going to notice a big difference in how well it actually does perform. Next up, I swapped out to my 3-inch gummy fin. This is significantly smaller, as you can tell just from me holding it. It's got, again, a draft of 3 inches and a surface area, one side 14.5 square inches, or about 1/6 the surface area of the big SUP fin. Paddling with this 3-inch fin has never been my favorite thing to do. It's only slightly a step up from paddling with no fin at all, and you can see here in the video how squirrely it is. You can see how the board, especially in the rear, slips side to side with each paddle stroke, and then as soon as I stop paddling, it turns sharply depending on which side I stopped paddling on. And it's an immediate and quite drastic turn. So then I swapped out for my 4.5-inch gummy fin. So this fin has been my go-to shallow water fin, not only because it offers a little bit better tracking than that 3-inch fin, as you're gonna see, but also it has this quick release fin bolt on here that I absolutely love. It makes it just an absolute breeze to get this fin on and off the board. And this fin has a surface area one side of 20.5 inches, so a little bit more than that 3-inch fin, but the difference is pretty dramatic. On the water, you can see the slipping in the back of the board is greatly reduced. And when I do stop paddling, the board does still turn, but rather than being a sharp turn, it's more of a gradual arc off to one side or the other, but it is quite noticeable. Then I moved up to the 6.5-inch draft race keel from Hydrus Board Tech. You can see here the shape is drastically different. It's much more elongated and swept back. And with that, we see a huge jump in surface area to 42 square inches on one side. And it is one of my go-to fins for that kind of shallow but not super shallow water when I want a better tracking performance. On the water, you can see this fin does track extremely well. As I get going, there's almost no slipping in the back. And once I stop paddling, the board stays on course pretty well, deviating less than a board width across half the length of the pool there. And instead of a turning deviation like we've seen with the 2 shallower fins, we're actually getting more of a side slip effect, or like a static draw stroke, where the board simply kind of slides a little bit to the side rather than turning, so it keeps you pointed in the right direction. The last fin that I tested was this touring fin. This is the Makani Kawa. It's about a 9.5-inch draft depth, and the surface area of one side is about 46 square inches. So a little bit more surface area than the race keel, but not by a whole lot. This is my go-to deep water fin. It tracks really well and it's very stable. Let's see how it compares in the pool test. On the water, you can see there is basically 0 slipping in the back of the board as I get up to speed. And once I stop, the board stays tracking dead straight. Now with the surface area being so close to the 6.5-inch race keel, I expected very similar performance, but I was actually quite surprised to see how much straighter this touring fin kept the board tracking compared to that 6.5-inch race keel. All right, so the last thing I want to compare with these fins is actually their price. So the 3-inch and the 4.5-inch gummy fins can both be had for about $25. So it's quite a nice price, nice and cheap, especially if you're going to be running them into the ground quite a bit. If they get chewed up, it's not a big deal. The Hydrus Race Keel actually don't have a price on this specific fin. Jason does not sell these on his website standalone. They come with his boards. However, similar shape and size fins tend to run between $50 and $100 depending on the exact brand and model. The Kawa here runs about $115 for this fin. And again, touring and racing fins like this can cost upwards of $200. So $115 is it's a little bit of money, but it's kind of square in that mid-range of fin prices. And lastly, we have the Big Up SUP fin. Now, the retail price on this fin is $135, and that doesn't matter if you get the T-16 version or the slightly longer T-19 version, they're both $135. I did get this on the Kickstarter as a backer for $75, which I think for this fin is a fantastic price. And I can see that the $135 is going to be a really difficult sell to people who don't necessarily paddle in shallow water frequently. However, if you do paddle in shallow water frequently, and if you've ever been thrown off your board when your fin unexpectedly hits the ground or a rock or something like that, you see the value in this fin right away. Okay, so what have we learned here? Well, I wasn't really surprised by the results from the standard fins, the 3-inch, the 4.5, the 6.5, and the 9. The common thought process is that if you go up in size in the fin, it's going to track better, and that definitely held true with these fins. I was a little surprised at the difference between the 6.5-inch race keel and the 9-inch touring fin, about how much better that touring fin did than the 6.5-inch. And I think that comes down more to the frontal surface area, not necessarily the surface area on the side of the fin. It's that deeper fin just has more hitting the water to help keep it going straight. Now the Big Up SUP fin kind of touts itself a little bit as a replacement for all of the other fins because of its large surface area and how well it tracks. For less than 3-inch draft, this fin does amazingly well. I don't think I would say that it's actually a full replacement for a touring fin, a little bit like it's advertised. It just doesn't track the same as a touring fin, and if I were doing a long distance tour, I would really want to make sure to have that extra size on there, that 9-inch touring fin. However, for daily use, especially again, if you're paddling in shallow water, it performs really, really well and way better than you'd expect it to for having less than 3-inch draft. I would put this in performance between the 4.5 and 6.5-inch fins. And if you were to go with the T-19, the slightly larger one, I'm willing to bet that performance creeps a lot closer to the same as the 6.5-inch race keel. So who should buy this fin? If you're paddling a lot in shallow water, I think it's a great option. It tracks much better than the 3-inch fins that it's most similar to in draft depth, and it tracks better than the 4.5-inch fins that draft deeper. It is not a touring fin replacement, however it does a very good job of keeping you going, especially if you are continuing to paddle. I am on the fence about recommending this fin if you're a whitewater paddler, simply because it is a hard metal fin with no flex, so if you do hit a rock, it is going to impact the fin and put stress on your fin box. However, with the draft being so low that if you're paddling whitewater in less than 3 inches of water, you're going to be experiencing a lot of weird things anyway and hitting your board in other ways, and it might not really make that much of a difference. So shallow water paddlers out there, I think this is a great option. It is a little bit of an investment, but if you're on your board 20, 30 plus days a year, especially in shallow water, I think it's absolutely worth it. All right, well that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Paddle safe, and I'll see you soon.